Welcome to all of the early attendees, everybody that got here right on time. I'll give another minute or two for everybody to get in, and then we will get going. And I'll pre-mention, since you guys are here early, you got that Q&A button on your screen. And so if you want to make sure you got a question, you have a good chance right now to get that question in before lots of other folks are asking questions. We did get some that came in ahead of time. So that's your tip. You might get your question like right at the top of the stack when we get to the Q&A part. All right, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Let's get started right here. And we're excited to have you. This is Admired Leadership Direct Unlocked. I'll tell you about 20 seconds about it. We do this every 3 weeks as a live podcast recording for the people that are members of our platform. A lot of high-level discussion around leadership, questions, answers. And then once a quarter, we unlock it for everybody. And we usually have a special guest and we have some extra conversation. So we're excited that you're here, whether you're a current subscriber, if you're somebody that reads our field notes, if you're somebody that just got somebody's like, you should do this, and they sent you a link and you don't even know why you're here. That's okay, right? So we're excited particularly to explore the nature of leadership from the lens of a captain. And maybe some of you might be familiar with the book Captain's Class, and our guest is featured in that book. And what this, I guess, then would this be a captain's masterclass? Yeah, I think let's call it that for the next hour. Carla Overbeck is here, and her legendary career in soccer will be part of the discussion, and what she has seen both as a player, as a captain, and now as a college coach. A lot of different ways to explore this. If you have questions, if you've come to this already, great. Get it into that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If they come up as the conversation goes along, great. The chat is open for everybody as well, but try to put questions into the Q&A. I'll be sorting through the questions as the conversation goes along, and then we will be ready to get to all of the things that you might be asking. So we're excited to have everybody here, and I'm going to bring in my colleague as I get to the button that allows me to add the spotlight. Alan Nelson is here, and he is going to be leading our discussion with Carla, and I am going to take myself out of it, but welcome to both of you, and take it away.
Thanks, Scott. You can hear me okay?
Dynamite.
Great. And Carla, thanks for being here. You can hear us and everything?
I'm good. I can hear you.
Great. Well, we're so happy that you're joining us today. We're thrilled to talk to you a little bit about leadership and how you think about it, and particularly what you've learned in terms of leading teams, especially as a colleague in your athletic career and now as a coach, but also as a parent, as a spouse, as a leader in all kinds of different domains in your life. We're just really thrilled to get some of your perspectives today. I know people will be eager to interact with you directly and ask some questions. I've got a couple of questions to get us started.
Okay.
And we'll just see where it goes. And if there's any place in particular you want to take it, you just let me know. You're holding the wheels of the bus a lot more than I am. For those who are joining us, if you're not familiar with Carla, I think you should become familiar with her. She's very modest. She won't be eager to talk about herself very much. She is highlighted in that book by Sam Walker, The Captain's Class, which is a really interesting leadership book if you haven't seen it. But, you know, an illustrious collegiate career, 4-time member of the NCAA All-Tournament team, 2-time All-ACC selection, part of the 1986 All-American freshman team, most valuable defensive player of the 1988 NCAA tournament. How many undefeated seasons at North Carolina, Carla? 4?
That's what the record book says, yes.
That's what the record book says, but but then went on to play with the U.S. national team and was captain of that team for a really long stretch that saw us at the World Cup, win World Cup championships, gold medals. But even more impressive, last year, U.S Soccer unveiled the Carla Overbeck Leadership Award, which goes to people in the community of U.S Soccer who they feel are really leading well, not just on the field, but in their lives and beyond. So when we were looking for people to talk with about leadership and really a view of leadership that aligns with how we think about it, we were eager to talk to Carla. And the more I talked to her, the more impressed I am that her approach and philosophy for how to lead others really aligns with how we think and how we talk about it. So Carla, thank you. And we're very glad to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Maybe I'll start with this. This is a question sometimes I'll ask when I'm with teams or with groups of people and we start to get into a conversation about leadership. I'll ask them to think of a leader that they really admire, somebody who in their life has really stood out to them, that they think had a profound influence on them, or that they still look up to, not just as a friend or as a colleague or maybe as a teacher, but really as a leader. And I'm always curious and interested to hear who people will reflect on. And I'm curious who comes to mind when I ask you that question.
That's an easy one. Obviously, my parents were extremely supportive of me throughout my career and all of my endeavors. They came to all my games. So those two obviously are very high up on my list. Tony DeChico, who was our longtime coach of the women's national team, he was an incredible leader. He led by example. He, was a dad. He was a husband. He was our coach. He was an incredible man. You could tell that he loved what he did. And on sunny days when we were out there training 2 times a day, he would just look up into the sky and say, "I love my job," and was extremely passionate about it. And I just had so much respect for him. Obviously, Julie Foudy, who was another captain of the women's national team, is a very dear friend of mine. We never took ourselves too seriously. She had lots of passion for, bettering our team and basically the soccer community worldwide. She was smart. And what impressed me so much about Tony was, after we lost in 95 at the World Championship, and we were in this formation that was sort of outdated. So he kind of stepped back, took a look at our team, the personnel we had, changed our entire formation. We went from a marking back sweeper system to a flat back 3. And we ended up winning the first ever women's Olympic gold medal at the Summer Olympics that following year. So he studied teams and wanted to be, like more teams. And we were super athletic. We didn't really play the game in a very, attractive way. We just kind of out-muscled and outran everybody. And so he really added some sophistication to our team. And I was really, really impressed with him.
That's interesting. I would imagine that, well, I think there's some name recognition for Julie, but I think it's interesting how many people would know Tony or would know that there was a leader of that quality that was standing next to them if they were, in the same room. Probably not very many. I find that's actually pretty common with a lot of the folks that we think are extraordinary leaders. They don't try to seek profile. They're not trying to draw attention to themselves. They're much more focused on what they're trying to do in their leadership than they are in getting attention for it.
Right. And that's important. You don't want someone that just stands up there and talks all the time, and because that becomes, less and less impactful. It's like how you lead your life every single day. The actions and the behaviors that you have are what make you, I think, an incredible leader.
Is there something from Tony and from Julie that you feel like you've really taken away, and not maybe their view or their perspectives, but something that he or she did that you've really tried to do in your own leadership, either as a player or as a coach?
Yeah, just get to know people as people. Obviously they're on the national team, so they're very good at what they do. But I think Tony did a really good job of, we would have dinners over at his house, and he would invite us over, and, we knew all 4 of his boys. We knew his wife. you could tell he really cared about you as a person. And for me, that goes a long, long way. And Foudy is the same exact way. She's kind of goofy sometimes. She's funny, but you can tell she really cares about people. And that's something that I've tried to do, leading the national team and even with, our Duke players. Just getting to know them as people is really important. And then, when times get really tough on the field or during a game, that they're going to work really hard for you. And so I feel like that's a really big deal.
That's really interesting to me. One of the things that we will talk about with leaders is that, they can have a really high standard for performance, but if they have a deep understanding of people, it creates a sense of relationship that, there's this view that good leaders are really empathetic and warm and fuzzy. And I haven't been around a lot of leaders with really high standards that I would describe as warm and fuzzy, but by having a deep knowledge of people, it says you matter and it says that you care. And it sounds like both of those folks did that, and you try to do that.
Absolutely.
Is there something about each of your players that you try to get to know and understand? Or are there ways, are there certain things that you do, like team dinners? How do you try to build that understanding with the players that you coach?
Yeah. And just let them know that you're here for them. And I'm an assistant coach. I'm not the boss. And so I can be sometimes kind of funny, and I can, make lighthearted statements and comments just to kind of relieve the tension. And, I try to do that. And like I said, I don't take myself too seriously. And just, getting to know them as people, you recruit them, their parents, their families. And it's really important because they're away from home for, the first time, a lot of times, without their parents there. And so, you wear lots of different hats, and yes, that you're their coach, but you're their friend, you're their parent, you're their mentor, you're their role model, you're, sometimes disciplinarian. And, you just have to have a really good relationship with them. And I think that is one of the very key things about being a good leader, is knowing the people that you're leading.
Do you have, I don't have the mental capability to keep all that straight. Do you organize yourself at all around some of those details or facts? I mean, I work really hard to remember names, and I've gotten some feedback that saying you're bad at names is just a crutch, which I admit that it is. But keeping the details on 100 people is a hard thing to do. How do you try, especially when you're recruiting and stuff, how do you try to make sure that you're on top of the things that you should stay on top of in terms of knowing people?
Yeah, just, knowing that that's important, knowing what they care about, and what is important to them, because, I'm in the kid business, and, I call them kids, but they're young adults. They're teenage, 18 to 22-year-olds. And I keep getting older every single year, and they come in, as 18-year-olds. And so I try to stay relevant with the music that they like, and, current events, and, so that I know, I'm not on social media. I have Twitter, but I'm not on TikTok, and I'm not, on Instagram and all that. So fortunately, I have a 20-year-old daughter that is in college playing a sport. So she kind of keeps me up to date on those things too. So, but just knowing, what is important to them, and, what they like. And I think that's, how you stay on top of it, and know more about the people that you're mentoring.
Should I be coming to you for a contemporary hip hop playlist or anything like that?
I don't do any TikTok dances. She tries to get me in some of her TikToks. She's like, "Mom, I'll get more likes." I'm like, you're not using me to do that. No, thanks.
Wait, now, is that just a personal preference, or or is that part of your leadership philosophy, that your limited use of social media?
I grew up and played in a time where there was no social media. We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
Like right around 96, we got these cool pagers. We thought that we were so cool. And but a lot of times during those events, all these people start reaching out, and it's a lot of fun to see that you're connected with those people, but then also it can be a distraction. And so I just make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing, and taking care of the people that I coach.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk a little bit about you as a teammate. As a captain on a team like the U.S. national squad, I have to imagine it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, you have arguably the best players that the country can produce at their positions. You're all at a very high level of excellence, and you're in essence peers. And you're not the coach. You don't have a real formal position of authority over them. You can't bench anybody. You can't start anybody. And yet, as a captain, you have to exert leadership. How did you think about that? And how would you try to maintain your status as an equal player on the field, and yet ensure that you were providing direction and leadership to that group of peers?
Yeah, a big one for me is just leading by example. The way I behaved, I have integrity. I was very genuine. I was authentic in, the relationships that I would have with people. I tried to get to know most of my teammates. I wanted them to know that they could trust me. I wanted them to know that I had their backs. And, it starts with you first. And, like you said, I had so many amazing teammates. I mean, Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, Christine Lilly, who is the most capped player ever in the world, male, female. She has had more appearances for the national team than anyone, like over 350 or something like that. Michelle Akers, who was, one of the best players in the world. And so the way I, went about my business, how I lived my life, my behavior, I had integrity. I was honest with people. I was able to have tough conversations. And for me, like, I was never the best. I was never the fastest. I was never the most skilled. But what I brought was my work ethic. I mean, I didn't want anyone to outwork me every single time I stepped on the field. And I feel like they respected that, and sometimes it's funny because they're like, "Oh, we didn't want to let you down," So I had players' backs. I let them know that, they could count on me, they could trust me. It's a funny story because one time we were playing, it was, right before the Olympics in '96, and women's soccer was never in the Olympics before. So we were fighting really hard to get in the Olympics, and we had just lost in '95. And so there was lots of pressure on us. And we were having, discussions with our federation, and they were telling us, only if you win the gold medal will you get a bonus. Meanwhile, our whole staff was getting bonus no matter what. And so we had lots of, conversations and not so good conversations with them about fighting for what we believed in was right. And so I was someone that always stuck up for my teammates. And it was interesting because we were training at Emory and for the Atlanta Olympics. And one of my teammates, who was not a starter, they were playing a game. And, not everyone was involved at the game because it was mostly the reserves, and our coaches would jump in too. So every time the coaches got involved, it was kind of, they want to win and we want to win. And so they went into this tackle with one of my teammates, and, one of our coaches jumps up, and he's, kind of getting stuck into her and saying some things that I didn't think was right. And so I jumped in, and he basically told me that, this is none of your business. Mind your business. This is something that I have with this player. And I told him he was wrong. And I fought for her. And I just said, she doesn't have a voice right now because she is a reserve, and I'm one of the captains, and this is my job, and I'm supposed to intervene, and this is what I'm doing. And, after it kind of settled down and everything, we got back on the bus, and to his credit, he apologized. And, he said it was absolutely, your business, and I'm glad you stuck up for your teammate. And of course, my teammate, tells me every time I see her, I still remember that time when you stuck up for me. And as a leader, you have to make hard choices. You have to have difficult conversations. You have to, really do what you believe in. And I firmly believe that he was in the wrong. And so I was right there to help her out. And, not knowing that, he could have done something to me where I didn't play or whatever. So, but I knew I could look myself in the mirror when I got back to my hotel room and thought that I, had done the right thing. So not always easy.
No. And what's interesting is, you talk about it with such an ease. It's so natural to the way you've learned to lead. And yet I'm like listing behavior after behavior after behavior that I find extraordinary. And that's one of them, to make sure that that you're not going to let anybody get, embarrassed or treated unfairly.
Right. Not on my watch. I wasn't going to do it. And
Yeah.
you don't know all the answers. You don't know the right thing to do. You don't, but you like, I knew I was a good person and I did the right thing most of the time. And you just instinctually do that. You help out teammates, you have their back. And I would want the same in return.
So Sam talks a little bit about it in his book. He talks about carrying the bags. Can you tell us a little bit about carrying the bags and why you did it and what you think it gave you in terms of your ability to influence your teammates?
Yeah. So instead of saying, hey, you guys, come over here and grab these 100-pound bags to help our equipment manager, Dinus, get these up into our hotel room. You just do little things like that. At training, you pick up the cones. At training, you help collect the balls. And we were going over to, I think it was Australia. We were on an overseas trip. And you travel for 25, 26, 27, 30 hours and everyone's tired, right? And, we get off the bus and here is our equipment guy who carries all of our cleats. He carries, everything that we would possibly need, our uniforms, replacement, everything. And he has like 16 of these big, huge bags and, they weigh 100 pounds. And so I get off the bus and it's, we don't even know what time zone we're in. And we've been traveling for over 30 hours. And I just grab one, hey, Dinus, grab the other side. I'll grab this with you. And so, we take it up to his room. Meanwhile, there are like 15 other bags sitting there. And so you don't, instead of saying, hey, do this, you just kind of show them like, hey, this is what we all do. We all help each other. Yeah, Dinus is our equipment guy. Yeah, we are professional players, but we are no better than he is. We need him to make us succeed. And so for me, it was easy. You help out, you're helpful. And, we'd go up, we'd put one up and we'd come back down and, some people would walk past us, whatever. But then some people would be like, look, like our captain, look what she's doing. Look what Dinus is doing. And so they would just grab a bag like, hey, grab the other side and we'll pick it up. And, it went much more quickly. It went smoothly. We got all the bags up to, the equipment room and, then we could all go to sleep instead of we just bypassing our equipment guy, walking up, well, it's about me. I'm going to bed. I need my rest. He's been on that same flight. We've all been, in the same environment. And so we're no better than he is. So help him out.
Yeah, I think that's great. Did it create any lasting behavior on the team's part? Did that become a pattern or was that the only time Dinus ever got help?
No. And then we helped out all the time. Like Mia would grab some bags, Fatty would grab the cones, Lil would do something else. And I feel like it's important. And I, have the Duke kids do this. We have these leadership groups. And I said, during preseason, it's not a freshman job. We're not doing that anymore. So you guys bring all the balls out. You make sure the balls are pumped up. You bring the pennies, you bring the cones, like your group, your leadership group does that. And then you will demonstrate to them that no one on this team is above these, remedial tasks or menial tasks. And so when they see their leaders helping out, there's no reason why anyone on the team cannot do the same.
I love it. I'm going to ask one more question and then I'll let some other people ask some questions. I talked a little bit about sort of leading by example and being in a position to sort of hold colleagues accountable. Tell me a little bit about how you would inspire colleagues. Again, you've got amazing players. When you could tell that somebody like Mia or Julie needed a lift or you needed to inspire somebody newer to the team, or maybe when you were at UNC and they were underclassmen. I mean, other than just rah-rah speeches, which I presume you probably didn't give very much of, like what would you do to really motivate and inspire other people to be their best and to want to overperform for you?
Yeah, I feel like it starts with you first, right? Like you have to be the one that demonstrates that one, you should have respect, like people should respect you, right?
Yeah.
The worst thing was when someone, wouldn't pass a fitness test and they're telling somebody, oh yeah, do this and this and this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you can't even run the fitness test. So why would I follow you? So I feel like just, holding people accountable, like, you have values and you have standards and you have these things. And, I know back in the day, the appearances and weren't as big as they are now. People weren't sponsored by, there were a few of us that were sponsored by, Adidas, Nikes, Fila, all that kind of stuff. And so we would really have to hold each other in check. Like, yeah, these companies are pulling you away from our team, and that's not what's best for us. And so we had a team first mentality. We all kind of held each other to these standards that we had. And if we felt, the leadership felt that someone was kind of straying from that, we would just reel them back in and be like, hey, help us help you.
Yeah.
That's not what's best for this team right now. You need to be at training. You need to be doing this. You need to take care of yourself. You need to eat right. You need to do all these things, because your behaviors aren't matching up to our standards. And that was conversations that, we had to have sometimes.
How about which I think is great. And it's interesting because there are a lot of peers who won't do that, that it's difficult because they're peers, because they're colleagues. Now, you having the captaincy on your jersey gives you a little bit more ability to do that. But good teams hold each other accountable a lot, and they have that conversation. Talk to me a little bit about motivation. How would you motivate your peers? What would you do to like, maybe they're down, and I'm not talking about holding people accountable for a lack of performance, but how would you show encouragement and support for people?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's having a bad day or they're thinking that they're, letting the team down, you go to them, you put your arm around, you tell them you care about them. Like, how can I help you? I see that you're down. Like, Mia, you haven't scored a goal in a couple of games, which is, very rare. But hey, people, the press is all over you, talking about you're in a slump. And, I don't think you're in a slump. Your team doesn't think you're in a slump. But, I feel like you're kind of shouldering this responsibility by yourself. Like, how can I help you? That's what I would say. Just ask them and get them into a conversation, that lets them know that you care about them, and you care that they are upset, but, try to let them know that, hey, you being on this team is unbelievable. And if I can help you in any way, if you're doing a behavior or something that, you want to catch yourself doing or not doing, I'm there for you. I can help you. So, just trying to kind of ask them, how can I be helpful? I think is important. And that's what teammates are all about. No one's going to have a perfect game all the time. I mean, I can count on my fingers and toes and thousands of times where I screwed up, and, people had my back and motivated me to be better.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I know people are tired of hearing from me. So Scott, let's take some questions. Carla, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got a bunch of good questions, enough to probably fill us up here. But if you got one or two more, get them in. Also, you can all check the chat. Mikey and our team put in links there for a great leadership profile on Tony DeCicco.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also a book summary on Captain's Class that talks about Carla and many other great captains and leaders. So let me get to the first question. As a new mom, I'm curious about how Carla encourages leadership and accountability in young girls and women.
Yeah. I had children just like Joy Fawcett did on the team. And it was important for my kids to be around all these amazing people. And so, as a new mom, you have lots of things that you're going through. Obviously, now you're responsible for this new person. I just feel like, be a good person, be kind, do the right thing. And that child will see how you're behaving. Behaviors are so important. You can't talk about one thing and do something else. So my advice to you is just, treat people how you would like to be treated. I mean, I sort of live by the golden rule.
Yeah.
and just know that, you as a young mom, you think sometimes, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing is right. Like nobody knows perfectly what to do in those situations. You're never really prepared for having a child and being responsible for another human being. So just be kind, do what you think, is best, and how you would lead your life. It would be my advice.
Great. I like how some of these questions are, you can tell, come from leaders who are in the kind of got the leadership hat on, and some are kind of in the athlete and sports specific. This next one is a little bit sports specific. What do you think are some of the differences and attributes of offensive and defensive players in soccer? Has there been anything that you've noticed?
Well, I was defender, and we never get our name in the paper unless we've been scored on. So, or it's our fault. All the attackers, we would give them so much grief. Like, yeah, your name in the paper. You read about yourself all the time. All these goals you scored, all these assists you got. So I feel like, both carries big burdens, because obviously the attackers think I need to score goals for my team to win, which is true. They need to affect the score line. That's why they're paid the big bucks to do that. And defenders have to have kind of that grit and that mentality that no one's going to get by me. And, fortunately for me on the national team, I was surrounded by amazing people. Sometimes my job was very boring because we defended starting with our attackers and our front runners first. So, anytime that I could try to, put the puzzle pieces and move people around so that the ball didn't have to get to me, that's basically, being a good defender. So the positions are definitely different. One is affecting the scoreline in a positive way. The other one is you're trying not to get scored on. Mentality is a big thing. Grit is a big thing. Like if, attackers, if they go at somebody 10 times and they score a goal once, that's successful. Defenders, I feel like, they're not always, you don't always see the great things that they do, because I always felt like as a defender, the less I had the ball, the better that my team would be. I wanted to play very simply. I didn't want the ball in the back, a long time. And so I would try to get it forward as, quickly and as strategically as possible.
Alan, you've probably noticed that Carla, this consistency of behavior theme is very big. So I wonder how this question will come. When you think about giving feedback to team members, any differences between how you would give feedback when you were a player, when you were a team member, as opposed to now as a coach?
Yeah, feedback is a tough one, because, you don't want to come right out with the feedback and then put up a wall and people become defensive. So as a teammate, that's why I tried to, be kind, and I tried to establish these relationships. Like, I care about you, right? And so if I tell you something, or give you some advice, it's coming from a really good place. Now, as a coach, you're an adult, and a lot of times they're teenagers, and you are, critiquing them all the time. You're their mentor. They look up to you. They respect you. And a lot of times they're kids, right? So I try to just ask, I ask them, how are your classes? Or how do you think you did in that game? Or, hey, how do you think your fall season went? How was your spring season? So I try to ask them so that they start thinking about it themselves. And then, then you can use some of the words that they use. And it's funny, because most of the time, their critiques of themselves were ones that you had for them as well. And it's not coming from you directly. So I feel, especially dealing with college age kids or young adults, I keep saying kids, I need to break that habit. Ask them, and then they kind of have ownership in their answer. And I feel like it's less of a blow to them. And you won't, get a kid that becomes really defensive because they've thought about it, and maybe they know that they're not holding themselves to that standard that that is needed for a team to win.
Wow, great insight there. And this isn't a magic trick, but Alan, were you writing down getting language and expectations on the table?
Yeah, and getting people to talk first. Yeah, I was writing down.
Yeah, exactly. I had a suspicion. All right. So what we have a question. How would you handle it if you were on a team and a leader was kind of taking all the credit and kind of pushing the team down in terms of honoring their commitment to the team and work? How can you turn around? How do you lead up to kind of get the leader back in the right direction?
So that's a hard one because, they were put in that position for a reason. Someone thought that,
Mhm.
they deserve to be in that leadership role. I would probably, if I noticed that kind of behavior, take them out to lunch or, get them out of that setting that they're in where they're kind of pushing others down and, go to a place, not in an office, go to, a restaurant or something and just say, hey, I noticed that this was happening. And I've noticed also the effect that your comment was having on our team. And I feel like, in the future, you can either say it differently or you can, you're not going to change someone's personality, right? So I feel like there are strategic ways that you can, in a kind, like gentle way, tell them that what they did and how they behaved was detrimental to the team. And hopefully then they can reflect and look back and kind of catch themselves saying, oh yeah, maybe maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. And so that's what I wouldn't embarrass them in front of the group. I would kind of pull them aside and let them know that I care about them. I think you're a great leader and what you bring to this team is amazing. But how you can help us in the future is this. So
Terrific. Question about getting people ready to embrace opportunity, right? Believing in people, maybe even before they believe in themselves. How do you help them embrace the opportunity, and how do you create a healthy competitive environment? Maybe people that maybe they want to be captain, maybe a couple of people do. What's the best way to kind of manage that process?
it's good because as a player and as a coach, I have kind of a similar, but different. Um, as a player, you know, you uh, you know that you have to perform. Um, you know that you have this responsibility to your teammates. And I struggle with this early on. And when the coach of the University of North Carolina would call me at my house, he would say, he would ask for me, and my sister would be like, "Hey, Anslin's on the phone," and I'd be like, "Tell him I'm not here." I was like so afraid um, because I didn't think that I could play at that level, and I feel like a lot of people struggle with confidence issues. So what I try to do is for our players going into big games or you know they're realizing that, hey, we're playing against a team that's really good. I just try to let them know that, listen, you're really good too, and there's a reason why we recruited you to come play at Duke University, because you're a great student, you're a great kid. We have like five or six spots a year that we had hundreds and hundreds of people that would want to come play here, and we chose you. So if you're having a tough time, or if you're, you know, having some self-talk that is negative, just realize that your coaches believe in you, or you wouldn't
Mm.
be here. And so, letting kids know that, especially before big games, or I'll shoot them a text and say, hey, I was watching our game back from last week, and the way you were like cutting through their defense was unbelievable. You're like, that's what we're going to need for tomorrow. So you catch them and you point out things that they have done really well in the past, and not expect them to do it moving forward, but you're hopeful that they will continue to do that behavior.
Uh, we have a couple of questions that some came in just right in a row. And I think as people start to kind of see where the patterns are here. And one of the questions is around the idea of who's right to become a captain. And obviously you can think of lots of teams where there's a star player who wasn't the captain. I believe Michael Jordan was never the captain of the Bulls, right? So who makes a good captain, both in aspiration, um, and how do you select for that? And then maybe tag with that the thoughts of who becomes a good coach. Maybe you're a good captain, a good player, but you wouldn't be a good coach, or maybe you really would be.
So before I became captain of the national team, Michelle Akers, Anson appointed Michelle Akers as our captain, and she was the best one on our team. Everyone looked to her. Everyone expected her to play well. If she played well, we would win. If she didn't play well, sometimes we wouldn't win. And I feel like everyone wanted a piece of her. And so a lot of that, it's a lot to bear that responsibility. And so she came to Anson and she said, I don't want to be captain anymore. Like, this isn't working out for me. And, sometimes people, if they're the best players, nobody knew who I was, right? So if they're the best players on the team, like, everyone looks to that player. Like Mia, she was the face of our team, the face of Nike, the face of soccer for so long. And she, of all people, never wanted that title, never. And, some people just, they would rather, whether they don't have the confidence or, they have other things that they want to do. They have a family they have to be responsible for. So not everyone is touted as this leader. I feel like when you are looking for leaders as a coach, first you want to know if they want that responsibility. And we ask our players all the time, like, does that interest you? And if it does, are you prepared for this, 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 and this? And it's a big, big responsibility. And I can say that my time on the national team, we had so many veteran players. Being a captain was an honor. I felt like it wasn't a job. Yes, you had to have some tough conversations sometimes, but I feel like just the veterans we had on our team, it was really easy because we all aligned. But when you don't have that, obviously it becomes more difficult. And I feel like first and foremost, if there are coaches out there that are listening, business leaders that are listening, I feel like you should ask the person if they want that responsibility. And if they do, and they want to embrace that, then that's the first step of just helping them become a really good leader.
We have a good list of additional questions, but Alan, are there things you wanted to explore? And you can come back to me for more questions here in a bit.
I do, Scott. I've got two things. I was looking back at your bio, Carla, to make sure I had the facts right. But the first World Cup victory in 1991, right, in China, and then the World Cup championship in '99. Was that the one in the Rose Bowl? Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
The run of the Rose Bowl, the overtime shootout. And then not to bring it up, but in 2000, the team wins the silver medal. And I know that your goal was the gold medal. Was there something as a captain that you did after a big victory like '99, or that you would try to do? And was there something that you would do after a major defeat that were either part of your routines or part of your leadership?
Yeah, so it's funny. Well, sort of not funny, but I love to win and I'm ultra competitive. I feel like I'm not so much anymore, but when I was playing we wanted to win. And after we lost in '95 to the Norwegians, who we loved playing them because they brought out the best in us in the game. Like, we didn't like them, they didn't like us. But you knew when you played them, your team was going to be on it. And we lost Michelle during that tournament. And we lost in the semifinal. Semifinal. So we didn't even make it to the final. And after the Norwegians beat us, they formed like this human train where they're on all fours, kind of parading around the field. And I just sat there and I stared at that. And I was in disbelief a little bit, but then I'm like, okay, kudos to them. They won, they beat us, whatever. We made a picture of that and we put it up in our locker room. We put it in our house. So every time we would leave our house to go train, we would see it. And we put it up in the locker room. And every time we stepped out of the locker room, whether it was the training room, whether it was to, go grab some food, whether it was to go train, we would see it. And I would like hit it sometimes. And sometimes I would make a gesture at it. But that was seared in our brain for so long. Then we didn't want to ever have that feeling again. So that was a constant reminder. And it, like psychologically, it might not be good because it's like a constant reminder of you losing, right? So I don't know what psychologists would say about that. But for us, it was motivation. And, that's all we needed was we were out there doing fitness. And one of us would say, oh, the Norwegians aren't doing this. And so we would run a couple more, so I'm glad they did it. At the time, I hated them for it, but also thank them because it gave us motivation to come back and we beat them in '96 in the semifinal. So
So you smile even now saying that.
Yeah, it felt great.
Do you still have the picture?
No, I probably after that, I think we might have balled it up and thrown it in the trash. I don't know, but I mean, it's it's still in publications. I could get online in a second and get it. Don't
Please,
anyone
you
do
need
that for me
motivation.
because then I'll start. Yeah.
How about after a huge victory?
Yeah.
Anything you would, or is there anything that stands out?
So I feel like we as a society, and maybe it was just our time, like we don't celebrate those enough, I think. And we even had this conversation with our college coaching staff is, those are the big victories. Like we need to celebrate those and we need to learn from them. And, we do video a lot of times with our kids and, they see themselves doing things really well and they see themselves where they can improve on for the next time. So that's a good point. I feel like, victories need to be celebrated. And, this year our team, we lost in the Elite Eight and we think the season was not a success. I mean, there are 8 teams still playing out of 330 something. And because we didn't get to the Final Four, because we didn't win the championship, we think it was a bad season, a failure. And I feel like we have to get away from that. So you have any tips then?
We might have a few. Was there anything that you said? I know that you're not the head coach, but was there anything that you said in the locker room after that loss?
Yeah, just, you're so proud of them. This doesn't define you as a person. And the thing that I love about the people that I coach is it's just really rewarding, when you work on something and they do it in a game. And that happened so many times. And, you just reiterate and emphasize to them that, they're great people. They are great competitors. You loved being a part of it. I mean, they taught me probably more than I taught them. And, and they're kids and you just have to make sure that, you do the right thing all the time to teach them, because you're not just preparing them to play a game. You're preparing them after 4 years, for life. And that's why I love coaching. I love seeing what they do after they leave college. And, they come back and they tell you all about what they've done. And it's just so rewarding knowing that you were a part of the process of them growing up. And to me, that's why I coach.
I love it. Scott, can we have another question?
Absolutely. A bunch of good ones here. Let me ask, you gave a great, obviously, story about your equipment manager, but Jude is asking about the non-coaching leadership. We got your athletic director, general managers, directors of player personnel. What is the impact on a team's success and in what ways? Specifically saying, how can bad administrative leadership handicap the success of a team that might have good coaches and players?
Yeah. I mean, if they don't feel like they're supported, fortunately at our school, we get lots of support. And, and it doesn't have to be monetarily. It can be, they come out to see your games, or after, our AD, Nina King, is after game, she comes down to the field and congratulates us. And if we didn't win, she'll, tell us, next time or something. But just knowing that those people that are in those types of positions care about you and and it's not always financial. I mean, sometimes it is financial, but um, they can do things that don't cost a lot of money to show you that you are important and you're valuable to that school and to all the kids you coach. I mean, shoot, these guys that get our field set and ready for us. I mean, I always see them like walking to and from the field. I'm like, hey man, our field's looking great. Thanks so much. It just people want to be appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really important. I mean, even at the highest level, the ADs, I mean, if you can just show those people that you care, that's what it's all about. And it makes you want to work for those people and want to do really well for those people, whether you get paid a lot or not.
Right. I'm going to pull two questions together here about tougher cases. Hey, if all your players are responding exactly like they were supposed to, then you're a great coach. It's like, that's easy. But what about when it's a little harder? So have you faced a situation with a good player who thought about quitting, maybe after failure, you had to deal with how to motivate them? And what about players who kind of maybe opt out of team values and standards? They're not responding to the feedback they're getting. Clock's ticking. How do you deal with players who are in those troubled situations?
Everybody wants to play. And so unfortunately, you can't play every single player on your team all the time. We are intentional with the players that we have and the numbers that we keep. And even then, I mean, shoot, even with the national team, sometimes players that wouldn't get to play, and here they are representing their country, playing in Olympics. Sometimes they get upset when they don't play, and so I feel like I have two hats. So with the national team, with Tony DeCicco, who I was talking about earlier, not everyone is going to play, and so in those types of environments, you need people that are going to be bought in. You are going to need people that align with your beliefs and your behaviors. And that doesn't always happen. I remember when we won in '99, we had this amazing team. And for whatever reason, Tony DeCicco his contract was not extended to the next year. Well, the Olympics were in 2000. And we would always tell Tony, okay, Tony, how about this? We'll make you a deal. You pick like 18, and then let us pick let us pick like the last 3, because we wanted people that would accept their role and do the right thing and behave properly on the sideline. And not all coaches do that. So at the collegiate level, I feel like that's more my responsibility because I am an assistant coach. You always know the players that get to play all the time. You can't neglect them, but I feel like the head coach, associate head coach, first assistant, they deal with those players a lot. My job as an assistant, I feel like, is to kind of help the reserve squad. And so if I can sense that something is not going as it should, or we've lost some people because, they haven't gotten to play, either I'll have conversations with those kids, or I'll take a kid that is in kind of that same group, but gets it. And I'll say, listen, I need your help, help me help these kids to be better on the sideline, so that in turn helps our team. And you just have to make sure that everyone's role on your team is really important, whether it's the analytical guy, the assistant coach, the trainer, the sports performance coach. Every single person on that team has a role and are very important. That's what makes up a team, right? So without this person, without any reserves, we wouldn't have a team. If someone gets injured or someone gets tired, needs replacement. Sure. So every single person on your team is very, very important. And you have to make sure that you let everybody know that.
All right, just one more, Alan, and then I'll get out of the way here and give you guys some time to wrap up. Stephen asking, what were the most significant obstacles to your leadership growth? Maybe as a captain, maybe as a coach, or things where you had that conversation, I need to get better at this. How did you handle that? What did you do?
So when I first got into coaching, I thought everybody thought like I did. I thought everybody was competitive. Everybody wanted to win like I did. We'll come to find out that some people on our team, just wanted to be there because they enjoyed being with their friends. They had a tough class schedule and they got out at 3:30 in the afternoon when we trained, and it was their fun time, and they relaxed, and they, like took a breath from a hard day of classes. And as a young coach, I did not understand that. And it took me a couple years. And I know sometimes when I see these people or when I think about them, like, I need to reach out to them and just say, I'm sorry. Like, I was a young coach. I was an idiot. Like, I didn't realize that not everyone aligned like I did and thought like I did and wanted to win and was as competitive. And so, our head coach would be like, Carla, give them a break, man. Like, they're not wired like you. Like, they don't care. Like, and I'm like, yeah, but they're like wasting their time and they're wasting my time. So it was really an adjustment for me for like the first few years, really, to understand that, there are people that are all different, and they're playing the game for different reasons.
Mm.
And so, I really had to learn that tough lesson.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, and on the heels of that, and you've been very open and you've been sort of vulnerable, which I appreciate. I've learned that I don't want to play you in Monopoly. It sounds like. Although it sounds like you wouldn't cheat, which is good.
I'm not a cheater.
Yeah. Well, so there's a fair number of Monopoly players out there who you have to count where the $500 bills have gone. But the kind of closing question that I want to ask you, and maybe you just answered this, though I don't think you did. But is there a moment in your time as a captain or as a coach, where as a leader, not as a player, but as a leader, you really wish you could have gotten the moment back? And no, I don't need you to become deeply personal, but is there a moment that you wish you could have gotten back, and what did you learn from it? What did you take from it? And is there a particular moment that as a leader you're especially proud of, and what did you take away from that?
I've definitely made lots of mistakes. I feel, going back to my college days when I was a player, I wasn't as mature as I am now, and you hope that happens in your life, right? And I, did some things, to people that I was not proud of. I remember one time we were playing this one-touch drill, and you only are allowed to touch it once. And so when you make a mistake, just get out of the way, right? And she was like protecting the ball. And so I like grabbed her by the shirt and I threw her down. And I was like, you probably in a much harsher way, but I was like, when you screw up like that, get out of the way. Like, everyone knows the rules. And so I wish that I did not do that. And there were times that, you have to make mistakes to be able to get to where you are. You're not going to just right out of college be this unbelievable leader. Like, your mistakes and your failures kind of mold you. And if you continue to make those mistakes, okay, then you have a problem. Like at Duke, one of our standards is fail forward. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes as coaches coaching these guys. But how do we react from that? Do we continue to dwell on it? Or do we watch a video, you understand what you made, the mistake that you made, and then moving forward to the next game, fortunately we have lots of games, right? A couple times a week, you have times where you can fix those. Yeah. And so that's what we call it, failing forward. As a leader and the captain of our national team, on the biggest stage, I feel I'm really proud of something that I did with Brandy Chastain. She scored. We were playing Germany in the quarterfinals, and it was in front of 80,000 people and millions watching on TV. And defenders make mistakes, and it ends up in the back of your own goal sometimes. And she did that. And I wanted to make sure that I got to her first, because I know that if I did that, I would still be talking about it. Remember, we played Germany back in '99, and so I wanted to make sure I got to her first, because I was going to tell her that we needed her. That, yeah, she screwed up. It doesn't matter. This freaking team is so good. We are going to beat these guys. And I told her, we need you. We need you. And at halftime, our coach wanted to take her out. And I said, no. She's one of our best defenders we have. Leave her in. And darn it, if she didn't, get the game tying goal. And then we scored another goal to win. And so she talks about that all the time. And that makes me feel, really good that I had her back, and I held her up in that time when it could have been really, really bad.
Well, I have to tell you, and then I'll turn it over to Scott. It's really been great talking with you. I know that I'm sure our group got a lot out of it, and you're very generous with your time. It's funny to me because we get to work with leaders all the time, and we've been doing it for a long time. And you sort of have no idea how extraordinary your leadership is, which is really actually sort of cool. It speaks to your modesty. But for you, you're just like, well, I just try to be a good person. And I would argue there's lots of great people out there, but they don't know how to show up as leaders. And your leadership is really special. And to give us a chance to look inside that window for an hour has really been a blessing. And I just want to say thanks very much, Carla, for being with us.
Oh, thank you. And I was thinking maybe after this call, I could set up some times to learn some more good behaviors.
My people will call your people immediately.
All right. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Scott?
Yeah, indeed. And thank you, Carla. We really appreciate it. And Alan, I'm sure will identify with my pain, because there's some real problems here, because for the whole hour I was like, all right, well, what are we going to clip as highlights here for Mikey to put on? So there's too many highlights. It's going to be very hard to isolate the good parts of this conversation to put on clips and everything else. But well, thank you again for everybody here. We're going to just go a couple more minutes for those who are curious about Admired Leadership, and maybe you hadn't encountered us before. Maybe you've been a Field Notes subscriber, and you're just wondering, what could this do for me? What could this do for my team? And ordinarily when we do Admired Leadership Directs, it's really Q&A, and we have our founder or one of our partners or coaches, and we kind of go right into the questions. But we do, in these unlocked versions, want to at least give the opportunity to explain a little bit about what it is that we do and what opportunities might be out there if you have needs for developing your own leadership, or perhaps the leadership on your team. So I'm going to bring in Wes Benders on our team, and he is the man on a mission with that today. So Wes, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Alan. And when Alan says things like have my people call your people, I have the distinct pleasure of being some of Alan's people.
Oh, you're my people.
I need to get the people then.
All the people.
Carla, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to, your time is yours. We're going to go after the hour, but you're welcome for any or all of what follows. And Wes, I work for you, not the other way around.
Certainly nuggets of leadership gold in that conversation, Carla. Thank you so much. For me, the first story, when Alan asked you about people you were thankful for, a shining thread came through. You described the individual who consistently look up at the sky and say, I love my job. My wonder is how many of us on the call today find that kind of a sandbox to play in our personal and professional life. I had the opportunity just this week to provide an Admired Leadership overview for a resource group of emerging leaders who are working in a 160-year-old global NGO and nonprofit. Huge history of developing leaders. The questions we posed at the beginning of our time: number one, we asked them, who are you and what do you love about what you do? People answer that question differently than the typical where do you work or what is your job or role. It's refreshing to dig quickly into what do you do and connect that to the things that you love. The second question was simply, who do you admire and why? It's amazing to see how the responses to the first question typically tee up perfectly the answers to the second question. When individuals think about what they love to do, their mind often drifts to the people and teams they do it with. We certainly heard that theme from Carla as she spoke about the teammates and coaches you trained with. Then, as the group named and described people they admired, they described both individuals who had great followership, relationships, and people who drove incredible performance and results. The third question gave the group a little more pause. What do you do with these people you admire? These leaders who really fall in a small percentage of all the leaders in the world, who drive both followership and results. The consensus of the group was, well, we simply try to be around them, or even more so, we choose to follow them. Our response to that question is, what if you studied, discovered, and worked to implement the small everyday behaviors of these people you admire? Would you become a better leader? The research and literature says overwhelmingly yes. And here's the analogy. If I want to be a better soccer player, told my niece, who's a big soccer player, that I was going to have the opportunity to listen to Carla. I told her, why would I not study the behaviors and routines of individuals like Carla Overbeck? Leadership, we believe, is no different. For 35 years, we've studied the world's best leaders, those who drive incredible followership and incredible performance, the world's best at giving feedback, the world's best at forging teams of leaders, the world's best at building relationships, the world's best at inspiring and motivating others. By studying these admired leaders, you can key in on the small, practical behaviors and routines that any person can work to implement immediately. Our team at Admired Leadership is truly enjoying conversations with individuals, with teams, with HR talent culture leaders, seeking a practical approach to making people and situations better. And that's the simple way we define leadership. Leaders make people and situations better. In a very saturated market of leadership development, the content you choose to engage with is key. There's a lot of leadership principles and memes as I scroll through my LinkedIn feed these days. Content that is simple, practical, and can be used, implemented immediately is preeminent in that space. After that, the conversation and dialogue around that kind of content galvanizes it in a way that it shows up naturally, ubiquitously, with our families, our friends, our colleagues, our employees, and everyone else we encounter. It comes across genuine and authentic, just like we just experienced with Carla. I want to share some quick opportunities for those intrigued enough to engage with our content and be a part of our continued dialogues. In the spirit of simple and practical, 2 words we love, I'm going to drop a meeting link in the chat box right now. This is a meeting link for anyone who might want to go ahead and schedule a quick connect. 15 minutes, regardless of your demographic or industry, is all that's needed. Schedule more if you want to. In addition to our current diverse pool of clients, we are loving meeting and developing custom scopes of work with individuals, teams, HR talent culture leaders on how to best engage with this content and galvanize it through conversation. We find there to be a great deal of discovery in simply exploring our behavioral approach to leadership. There's several ways to do that. All of these will come your way in the form of a follow-up email. All of this you can navigate to on our website as well. If you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe to Field Notes, daily practical thought leadership around behaviors and routines of the world's best. Second, we host 2 additional no-cost virtual sessions every month where we interview individuals specifically on how they are exploring and implementing admired leadership behaviors. Third, we host in-person exploration sessions in cities across the U.S., next one coming up in Philadelphia. Last, and we find most beneficial, we currently have availability to coordinate custom conversations with some of our coaches to discuss your particular circumstances and situations. For everyone, the content you engage with is preeminent. The dialogue around that content galvanizes it in an authentic way. Question becomes, do you want to get better? If so, we would love to connect with you. Scott, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out, sir.
Absolutely, Wes. And as you can tell, Wes, I liked when Carla said she's in the kid business, right? She's in the kid. We're in the leader business, right. And Wes is the one to talk to. So we really appreciate that. All right, so we've got probably another couple of weeks for our subscribers for the next AL Direct. But for everybody else, one of the things that subscribers learn is how do you do that when you observe a leader that's a results leader and also a relationship leader that got followership? How do you pick out those patterns of behaviors? And probably there are some of you who were on this last session, and some of you have already messaged me. Somebody, David, put one in Twitter. You were like, oh, that's that behavior. That's that behavior. Sometimes the leader isn't actually aware of the thing that they're doing, right? They know that it works. They don't know that other leaders we study do this. And so the mastery of what's so valuable about our platform is that over the 35 years, it's been the exposure to tens of thousands of leaders where we say, interesting pattern in this soccer coach, interesting pattern in this pastor, interesting pattern in this corporate leader or an NGO leader like the folks that Wes was talking to. And that's where the magic is when we kind of say, here's something you can do and you can work on and you can make it practical and part of your leadership style so that it comes across, as Wes said, natural and authentic. We appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next time. If you want to join us for Unlocked, and for subscribers, we'll see you on the next AL Direct in just 2 weeks. Have a great day. Carry somebody's bags today.